marketing anything, any product, promoting literally anything, it all starts with making good product. So whether that is, oh my God, now I'm huge. Whether that is, making a good toothpaste, or, that has all of its benefits, or making a good podcast, or making good content. It really starts with that. If you don't have insights driving to your content, so like that's the whole reason people are there, then frankly, marketing won't help. So you really have to start with the baseline of, content. So don't just turn on the mic and, talk to thin air, because I'm not saying you can't make magic in that space. I'm sure people have, but the majority, it's not that. It takes a little bit of planning. It takes an insight, like why, what do people want to hear about? Why am I the person to give that information or to create that story? I think it just takes a little bit longer. So first thing is make good content. It's really important, especially with 1 million+ podcasts out there, and the average podcast now getting like 100 listens. So second, marketing is you got to be direct. You have to ask for what you want. So if you want people to share your show, you have to ask them. This includes your friends. Send an email out. And this, by the way, is targeted not at people in the professional sphere who are like marketing for a company of podcasts. This is really more if you're like building your brand, your podcast. So I think it's really important that you ask for what you want, which can be really hard for somebody like myself. But if I started a podcast about 1.5 years ago about career development for people in the middle of their careers. And it was very difficult for me, but guess what? No one knows that I need help sharing it and getting it out there if I don't tell them I need that. Nobody's gonna just follow, rate, and review just because, they like you. I mean, that's not true. Some people will, but to get momentum, you need somebody to be the first, and you need the first 10, 15 likes, ratings, and reviews to come from somewhere. So you have to ask for it, ask your friends, and then make a call to action on your show. I recommend it. It doesn't have to be every time, but like follow us, rate us, review us every time. And if you're, if the bulk of your listeners aren't on Apple, you can call out Podchaser or whatever platform makes most sense for you. But I think that's really, really important. And then what you can do is you can give people something in return if they do comment. Just want to shout out Michelle Cobb. She gave us this review. Said she really likes to listen to our show while she's getting ready in the morning. Thanks, Michelle, for listening. And you know what that does? It shows people that you're listening, that you're actually reading the comments, and that they actually matter, which just sparks like, hey, maybe I'll do it too. So I highly recommend giving people a shout out and just really engaging in the commentary when you can. Then my third point is to make it easy to share. So I know that like sharing a podcast is actually incredibly easy, right? You can just like click to share, essentially, like click to copy a link in literally any platform. But what I mean is when you have a guest, when you're interviewing somebody, or if you have a voice actor or maybe a sound editor or producer, you have these people who are helping you on the show. Well, guess what? Maybe social media is not their thing, or maybe like communications, like externally to the world, isn't their thing. So give them copy. Episode 14 is out today. Excited about the conversation, or a poll quote. Michelle said this really insightful thing and give them a way to express exactly what you're hoping to express that'll engage people. Short, sweet, to the point, but give them a way to do it. It doesn't have to be a visual piece of creative, though, I mean, I feel like a Canva or projector, they make it so easy to create something visual, but it doesn't have to be. It can literally be an email that's like, hey, John, thanks so much for being such a great editor. Can you shoot this out to your network? You know, can you shoot a note out about this episode to your network? It'd really help. And then you give them some guidance. So I think making it really easy to share is super important. And there are so many ways to do that. So I'm just giving you a teeny bit right here. We can talk more about it in the breakout rooms. Number 4, and by the way, I'm stopping at 5. So all of this is super top line, but I know we're all here to break out. So I would say number 4, utilize the written word. So we are an audio medium, so that is awesome. But guess what? Audio is still not super searchable. It's getting better, but it's not super searchable. And people live by the Google. So if you utilize the written word to help with your SEO, your search optimization, it can only help you. You can do it in a few ways. Number 1 is the easiest, show notes. You're already putting show notes into your episodes more than likely. Don't keyword stuff, meaning don't put sports, baseball, because Apple's good enough, Google's good enough to see that and shut it down. But, you know, are you talking about celebrities? Use their names. You know, today we're talking about, you know, I don't know, Brad Pitt. What are people, you know, today we're talking about romantic comedies, we're talking about film, and then give a little bit of example, or, you know, a little bit more about what you're doing with keywords in mind. And there are tools to help you with keywords. Highly recommend learning a little bit more about keywords. But then also, if you have a website, I absolutely recommend considering full transcripts. And this is, first of all, helpful for accessibility. And we live in a world that that is so able to be accessible. So like, let's make it accessible. Not everybody has perfect hearing. So while they may not be completely without, you know, hearing, they may need to read along with something like closed captioning to help. So transcripts are great for that. But then guess what? We also live in a world where some people don't want to listen. They want to read. So transcripts are really great for that. And I highly recommend using, leveraging the written word for your search optimization. Like, it only benefits you to add these tools into your toolkit. And then last, number 5, you all already get it, but network in the space. I think it's really, really important. Rising tides lifts all ships. So the more we talk to each other, the more that we talk about the space and the community, you know, in our own communities, the better. Obviously, you can find folks to swap promos with and to swap interviews with. That's super easy to do, but be selective. I think it's really important. Networking is great, and talking to people in the space and interviewing and swapping promos are essential. However, be mindful that the shows that you partner with should match your audience. So if you target women, in retirement, I'm just going to go for a long shot, like the hardest audience in podcasting, women in retirement, like, make sure you're not on, Joe Beningo's sports show. It's not your right audience. And make sure so you're looking both at your demographic, so who you're targeting, then also like make sure the content aligns. It does not have to be the same. So just because you're a sports podcast doesn't mean you have to be on a sports podcast, but like, what are the other affinities that your audience have? So like they clearly like sports because you have a sports podcast, but are they super into beer? Maybe they're into politics. Really identify what aligns with your content and go after shows and interviews to swap and co-promote that align there. So those are my 5. So number 1, make good content. That's the easiest. That will draw. Number 2, be direct and actually ask people to share, follow, like, review, all of it. Make it easy for people to share, and then utilize the written word. And last, network, but be smart about it.
Fantastic.
It was short. It was short.
No, that's great. We welcome questions.
Yeah.
It looks like someone has one. You mentioned women in retirement as the hardest audience to reach via podcasting. Do you have any hard data on that?
So there is hard data that I'm referencing. However, it does not come out and say it. So the number 1 audience, though, it's getting more even over time. Males have been the bigger podcast listeners since the inception. And then younger audiences tend to be easier as well. So young men, and by young, I mean like, still adult men, but millennial, elder Gen Z. But so yeah, actually women, older women are a harder target because they're just not naturally in the space yet. They will be, and it's growing, but yeah, if you look at any listening data, you'll pull that insight out pretty easily. And I love Dating While Gray. What a great concept. I just love it. I don't know if you've listened to the Phil Donahue podcast with Marlo Thomas. Oh, what a show. And I know it's like sort of the opposite because they're all long marrieds, but it's a fantastic show.
Do you have any advice on building out a PR list of names?
A PR list of names?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I almost would like a clarifying question answered, but I'm going to start with number 1. If you're doing it on your own, Podchaser is awesome. It does cost money to get like certain insights, but just even like searching for shows, Podchaser, I think, is much easier than Google, because with Google, you're going to get the same shows like in multiple hits. Like it'll be, the daily for the first few pages. And then, whereas on Podchaser, if you're like, I want a news, daily news podcast, it'll be like the daily. And then, NPR's, whatever it's called, you know what I mean? So that's number 1.
So I think she's trying to find contacts like to reach out to at like, journals and things like that.
So that's an interesting one. So number 1, read articles. So set your Google alerts for podcasts or whatever. And when you see, this is literally the scrappy way to do it. It's the guerrilla style, which is what I'm here about. When you see that article, look at the journalist's name, read their work. That's number 1. You actually you will do better in your outreach if you've read their work, what they talk about, and you can reference it at the top of the email. Hey, Max Willens, this guy from Digiday. I see you talk a lot about, the podcasting landscape or the industry versus like show specific. I really liked the piece you did on, monetization and what COVID is, how it's impacting it. And then you get into why you're reaching out. But so that's my best advice. And I've gotten this from PR people and journalists actually. So you have to show them that you know what they focus on, and then get into what you're doing. But the best advice for finding those people is turning on your Google alerts for the topics you want to hear. And you do have to wade through some of the BS that doesn't connect with you. The other thing is obviously follow every publication. I mean, I'm sure everybody here follows podnews.net, number one, Podcast Business Journal. Those are my two biggies, but then you have Hot Pod. I mean, you have a million of them, and they curate the articles that they find and pull them in as well. So that can be a little bit of a shortcut to getting to some of the, like, to knowing who the journalists in the space are, if that helps. But I would also recommend get outside of the podcast journalist space, because a lot of people are vying for that attention, and a lot of, yes, I can. A lot of people are vying for their attention. And now it's, Amazon is going after them, SiriusXM Pandora is going after them, and Spotify are going after them for the same thing. Little me, independent podcasts are going after the same thing. Well, guess what? Amazon's PR team is bigger than me. So think about, like, if, for instance, Laura, I love that you gave me an example to use. So Dating While Gray, like, that is far beyond podcasting, right? I mean, Cosmo, Red Book. I'm trying to think of, like, women's lifestyle, but then, like, Bumble, do they curate stories about lifestyle? I actually don't know if they do or not, but I feel like if you get outside of the podcasting landscape and try and think about your category more holistically, and that you are an entertainment brand in this category, not just in podcasts, the world opens up a little bit more.
I will also say that because many journalists are freelance now, it's a lot more bifurcated than it was 10 years ago in any space. So
it is incredibly difficult, but that's not to say it's impossible.
No, it's just interesting to see, different people on writing on different things, and they're writing on podcasting this week, and they'll write on something else, 3 weeks from now.
Right. Exactly. But guess what? They want people to read their work. And so when you show that you not only have read their work so much so that you can reference it and know them by name, even though it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, because it's not like you're like their biggest fan or anything. You literally are looking for them for these journalists. It's still, you're putting in good faith effort that most people who reach out don't do.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to remove the spotlight here.
Phew.
And put us back on gallery view. And we will go ahead and break out for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'll put you guys into pretty small groups so that everyone can talk. And we'll come back. And if you have further questions for Steph and you're not in her breakout room, feel free to bring those back for when we return.
And you can always email me too, steph@meetcute.com.